Well, we stay in Durban. Our reporter Devon Morgan is attending the World Economic Forum in Durban.
He sat down with Sneha Shah of Thomson Reuters Africa. He asked him for insights on what we mean by the term so often used at this event, inclusive growth.
I think the last year has been very instructive for leaders around the world in politics and in business about the need to really be action-oriented around inclusive growth. Because as you can see, globalization has not benefited the majority of people in the countries that we serve. And so there's a real sense of urgency at the WEF actually that I haven't seen in previous sessions around this particular topic, and around the fact that actually technology can be an enabler in driving inclusive growth, especially around things like financial inclusion, land rights, rule of law, that we can really use technology not just to bridge the gap but actually to take us to a whole new place in Africa.
And the consequence of not actually keeping pace with that technology, which is a major theme here, is quite dire. For example, we were talking off camera about what the consequences can be of using technology effectively to deal with land issues, to deal with justice issues. Just bring us up to speed in terms of how that really works on the ground.
Sure. So if you look at most of Africa, in South Africa we're quite privileged because we have quite advanced land rights systems. Yeah. But in the rest of Africa it's quite manual in a lot of places. So there's often duplicate title deeds, nobody really knows who owns the land, banks don't want to lend against land because they don't consider it sort of a solid asset. And so if you can help digitize it, and we do that, we work with a lot of governments at Thomson Reuters to actually help digitize the land records, what you can then do is provide governments with a legitimate source of revenue through property taxes, but you also allow the banks then to have a real asset that they can lend against. So farmers, for example, could start getting access to credit, and then it starts really benefiting the whole population. You could have mortgage markets. A country like Kenya, over 40 million people, but only 20,000 mortgages. That doesn't allow for the population to move up to a middle class. Whereas if you could really empower that, you really bring more people into the system overall. And the same thing with the legal system. So in most court cases across Africa, things are very manual. So you have documents that get lost, right? Or things that take weeks to come to fruition, or to a case that can take months from start to finish. And so it's very disempowering for the majority of the population. But if you can automate that and people can have trust in the rule of law, then a population can actually come along, and more investors actually would invest more sustainably in these economies. So I think that's where the critical sort of piece around inclusion and some of this automation really comes to roost.